Okay, good morning and welcome to AUB and MSFEA. I'm Mazen Saghir. I'm the chairman of the organizing committee for Ideas 2019, and it's my explicit pleasure to welcome you to the opening session of Ideas 2019. Ideas we call it our flagship event of the spring semester, and as I'll tell you a bit more about it later on, it includes various sessions that will cater to different types of interests. So I'll be back and tell you a bit more about our program today. Just a bit of history. So this is it used to be called the Student and Alumni Conference. It ran for maybe 10 or 15 years. And then last year, we sort of rethought what this event should be like. And we came up with the Ideas concept, which is a very modular type of event where we can have different modules happening with different emphasis or to match the interests of different people or different groups. So I don't want to spend too much time right now just talking about that. So I'd like to introduce the dean to give some introductory remarks, and then I'll come back and tell you a bit more about the program. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Mazen. I was about to say roughly the same thing he said. I'll say it in a slightly different way. I want to welcome especially all of our alumni who are here with us today. We're truly proud of you, and we hope that you come back often to this place. And I should let you know, roughly half of our faculty in MSFEA are alumni themselves. So this is a place that has a lot of love for its alumni, and we would like you to make sure that this is also a second home for you. So as Mazen said, that we around this time every year, for the past 17 years now, we had something called the Student Faculty Alumni Conference. And it would be a platform for us to come together and celebrate our students, our alumni, and our professors' achievements. And every year we invited distinguished alumni to share their wisdom with students, and we gave a platform for our undergraduate and graduate students to present specialized research papers that more or less no one understood in the audience. So everyone would clap politely by the end of the presentation, and we would all go home. So as you can guess, after some time, that model kind of wore thin, and people started seeing organizing this event as a chore rather than as something that would be uplifting and happy. So 2 years ago, as Mazen mentioned, we realized that it was time to redesign this or close it down. And we decided to redesign it. And like any good designer, we waited until about 10 days before the start date to begin redesigning. And so that was last year, but we came up with a great concept, which was Ideas. And we said that, well, we go back to the origins of the conference, what were its purposes. We realized that if we design, again, something static with one purpose and it has the same design over time, eventually it too will wear out. So rather than having any single purpose, we said, let's make this a platform that's flexible, that allows people to add to it what they feel is important to add to it at that time. The thing we do want to keep is celebrating our alumni, so that will remain in all of them. But other than that, it's essentially organized. It's a self-assembled platform. So we have students who have put on competitions. There's a competition, I think, this year for how high of a structure you can make out of a single A4 paper. Is that there? There's a workshop on artificial intelligence and machine learning. There is a maker fair where students are bringing things that they've built to show. There's an entrepreneurship competition. So we have a startup competition with a $30,000 first prize. So those are FYP students who have been going through our FYP accelerator. There's also a second and a third prize. And so that's essentially what has been done with the conference. It's basically a more flexible structure, one that can respond naturally to changing needs and changing interests. So we called it Ideas, and that was the organizing committee came up with this with the help of Vida Mia Garcia. I don't know if she's in the room today. Ideas is an acronym that means a lot. It literally does. I is for innovate, integrate, inform, inspire, imagine, impress. D is for demonstrate, design, develop, discuss, dare, and do. E is for express, engage, experience, energize, excel, explore, encourage. A, aspire, advise, achieve, acquire, accelerate, award. S, start, share, show, sustain, spark, and shine. And so that's ideas in a nutshell. We're very proud of it. It's emblematic of the larger changes that are happening at MSFEA, all brought together by our central organizing theme of promoting human well-being. So everything we do somehow links back to that core purpose. So this year, there's a rich agenda. I'm not going to steal thunder from our organizing, the chair of the organizing committee. I do want to just thank the committee themselves because I know they're too humble to do it. Let's see if I can make the technology work here. There we go. So the organizing committee is led by Dr. Mazen Saghir, who you've seen already, and it includes Ruwaida Kenj, Sabla Nouri, Zeina Koreitem, Muhammad Harb, Ayman Aisi, Jason Amaturi, Samir Hosseini, Muna Aitani, Omar Mizmar, Salim Hani, Mia Azar, Sarah Halwani, Khalid Juju, Nadine Nakad, and Rana Bilbaisi, who's there in the back wearing the t-shirt for the big game or for ideas today? Ideas. Okay, well, since I mentioned the big game, I'll mention it again. The big game is today at 6 p.m. Those of you who are guests from outside of AUB may not remember, but the big game is an annual competition. It's a football game in which MSFEA beats the rest of the campus. Okay, so you know the outcome already. It used to be upper lower campus, and then they kept trying to come up with formulas where the competition would be a little more even. And so finally it ended up MSFEA versus the rest of the campus. So we've won the last 5 years. Hopefully we'll win again tonight. So I hope to see you all there. I'm looking forward to experiencing this event with you, and I'll turn the floor back to Mazen. Thank you very much.
Schedule. Escape.
ايوه شو بتحط؟
حط schedule 1 بعدين schedule 2 حط وين؟ schedule 2 كل مرة بس بهيك. Okay. All right, so I'll just go over the schedule with you briefly. So this is, of course, the opening session, and we're very proud to have our alumni back. And we're all very excited to listen about how MSFEA has helped shape their careers and maybe get some words of wisdom, especially for our students, on how to manage your career. Later on, we have a lot of sessions that are running in parallel. So again, you can choose the session that best caters to your own interests. So from 12 till about 3:30, we have the Creative Achievement Awards and the research posters. So as you probably all know, our senior students have to work on a final year project. And each program in MSFEA has nominated 3 groups to compete for the Dean's Award for Creative Achievement. So these are essentially the best of the best FYPs, and each group will be competing with groups within its own program. And then I think later on there's another award that we'll give to one of them for the best FYP award overall. But each program will have one group win that award. So again, I encourage you to please visit the displays. The students will be on hand to explain their projects and to tell you a bit more about them. And I think they're all very, very interesting. The research posters will also be going in parallel. So those are posters by undergraduate and graduate students describing their research. So again, they will be on hand to explain more about their work and tell you a little bit more about it. At 11:30, we have an interesting session in this room over here. It's called a 3-minute thesis. And this is the first year we're doing this. And the idea is we're asking graduate students to try and explain their work, their thesis, in just 3 minutes. And they only have one slide that they can use to try and help them explain that concept. So it should be very interesting to try and see how someone can explain their work in 3 minutes. And obviously, we're also going to choose a winner for the best 3-minute thesis presentation. A little bit later on, at 2 o'clock, we have the undergraduate research presentations also in this room. So this will be our undergraduate students, some of whom are working on research projects. So they will be telling us a bit more about those projects. In parallel with those, we also have special events by different departments. So civil and environmental engineering will have their own final year project presentations going on. And I believe they have a special guest. One of our distinguished alumni will be talking to the students. And architecture and design also have the Reyes Award presentation happening in the Masri lobby upstairs. At the same time, we have a deep learning demystified workshop. It's going on. It's given by a trainer from NVIDIA. So again, I think many of you have heard about machine learning and deep learning. So if you're interested to learn more about how it works technically, especially the students, again, I think there's still an opportunity to register for the workshop and see what it's all about. In the afternoon, of course, we have the AUB big game. And again, we hope everyone goes down and cheers MSFEA team and hopefully, witness yet another year of winning. So this is for day one. For day two, we'll start also early. We'll start with research presentations. So this will be for the graduate students. They're presenting their research work. And then at 12 o'clock in this room, we have Ideas Talks. So Ideas Talks is a session which is modeled after TED Talks. So we have asked some faculty members from MSFEA to tell us a little bit more about the work that they're doing in a very informal way. It's supposed to be a very accessible presentation, and we've asked them not to put any formulas in their presentation. So it should be fairly accessible to anyone, and we hope again to see a lot of you in these. We have some very interesting talks. So again, if you check the program, you'll see who the speakers are and what they'll be talking about. In the afternoon, we have the Startups Demo Day, which is, again, some FYP projects have entered a special startup program. I think those interested can speak to Dr. Qaisi about it. Those students will be working on an FYP towards some startup idea. And in this session, they will pitch their idea to a panel of judges. And one of them is going to win an award, which will enable them to actually take it to the next step and build an actual company out of it. We also have our architecture and design distinguished alumni panel. So 2 of our distinguished alumni could not make it to this session. So they will be talking to students from architecture and design in that session. And then we have the Maker Faire. So the Maker Faire from 9 till about 3:30 is essentially a celebration of the tinkerer within. So as engineering students, we're really interested in building things. And this session will showcase some of the projects that some of our students have done, as well as the work of our student societies. So again, you'll be able to see what different societies have done, and many of them have prepared some fun activities. So it's going to be a very interesting session to go and check out the different projects. We also have a special edition of our Live Thursdays musical program. So throughout the semester, not every Thursday, but every few Thursdays, we'd have one of the students perform, during the lunch hour, I guess. And so we have a special edition of this. We've brought back some of our performance. So throughout the Maker Faire, there will be some musical interludes in between. And then finally, we have this faculty feud, which is like a competition, friendly competition among faculty members on some trivia questions. Again, it's happening during the Maker Faire event. And then finally, we will close the day tomorrow with our awards ceremony. So the different sessions, usually every session will evaluate participants in that session, and we will give them an award at the end. So these awards will be presented in the end. And I know some of the other departments, I think civil engineering as well as electrical engineering also have some special awards during those sessions. So again, please feel free to join us and see who the winners are. So this briefly was a summary of the program. Again, the programs will be displayed throughout. So we have the screens, and I think the program is definitely also online. So if you'd like to check it out online, you can do that as well. And that's pretty much what I wanted to say. So I'd like to hand it over to Professor Salah Sadiq, who is going to introduce our distinguished alumni, and we look forward to hearing more from them. Thank you.
Thanks.
So the next order of business is to acknowledge our distinguished alumni, at least the ones that were selected for this year. There are two categories of distinguished alumni. There are the regular distinguished alumni and the young distinguished alumni. Looking at the first row, I see all of them are young. I don't know where the regulars are. So we'll start with the first awardee, Dr. Hrayer Aprahamian. Dr. Hrayer is a graduate of the Industrial Engineering program. He is a young, distinguished alumnus. Dr. Aprahamian obtained his PhD in Industrial and Systems Engineering from Virginia Tech just last week from the CV. It just says 2018, basically. An MS in Engineering Management from AUB and a BS in Physics from the Lebanese University. Hrayer is an assistant professor in the Department of Industrials and Systems Engineering at Texas A&M. His research interests are in the application of operations research, optimization methodologies, and statistical tools to problems arising in healthcare systems and public policy decision-making. All of that. His recent research has examined programs for large-scale screening strategies that incorporate critical population-level characteristics. He received the Paul Torgerson Research Excellence Award in 2018, and he was a runner-up for the Pierre Scala Prize in 2017 for Research Excellence in Healthcare Management Science. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Hrayer. Now, every awardee is going to have a few minutes, as Mazen said, to share his or her wisdom, and so the podium is yours. All right.
Good morning. Thank you so much. The second one. No, can it be five? Oh, yeah. Right. Good morning, everyone. First and foremost, I want to thank AUB, MSFEA, and in particular the Department of Industrial Engineering for this recognition. It's really an honor. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to give you a very brief overview of the type of research that I do. It's going to be very high level. I just want to show how exciting things can be done within our field, especially operations research and data analytics. And finally, I want to conclude with some concluding remarks. So what I'm really interested in is applying the tools that I've learned to problems in healthcare. And the reason why I choose healthcare is not only because of the positive outcome it can have, but because the problems are really challenging over there. And there are many reasons for that. There's high levels of uncertainty, strong dependencies, and dynamic systems. And we have to take all of that into account while doing this. Moreover, there's also the availability of large sums of data, but most of these are not utilized because it's very complicated to analyze, and usually data is missing or unreliable. However, operations research and data analytics provide a lot of tools that we can use, so there's a lot of opportunities for us to be able to solve these complicated problems and come up with valuable insights that we can actually implement in practice. And these include optimization tools, clustering techniques, and many others, as you can see over here. And today I'm just going to give a brief overview of how we can use these tools in order to really come up with powerful insights and strategies and policies. So I'm going to split this very brief talk into two parts. The first one is about large-scale screening, in which we want to come up with robust strategies for heterogeneous populations. And then the other one is going to be more into the clustering component, how to categorize categorical data into risk clusters. So screening large populations actually is essential in many settings, and that includes multi-access communication networks, industrial quality control, and in my case, I'm interested really in the healthcare setting. Moreover, data reveals high levels of variability across subjects, and actually across subject demographics, and that's age, gender, or race. And in fact, this is just an example that shows you how the risk can vary from one subject to another, and this is actual data. And we can see that, for example, males are 2 to 9 times more likely than this is for HIV, for example. So it's quite heterogeneous. Now, currently, what testing facilities do is they ignore all of this data. And they simply assume everybody is the same and proceed with testing. However, that's by far not optimal. And the key question becomes, how can I incorporate all of this information into practical solutions? Now, I'm not going to go into the details of it, but this can be done, actually. And in fact, what we can achieve are testing schemes that are cheaper, more accurate, and more equitable at the same time. So we can drastically reduce cost while improving performance. And that's the power of data-driven testing schemes. So on the second part, I'm going to talk more about the categorical clustering schemes. And the objective over here is to get my heterogeneous population and ask myself key questions. How do I cluster them into risk classes? Now, this is a very challenging task because we have to take into account many factors. How do I optimally expose heterogeneity? How can I handle large data sets? How can I take into account missing or unreliable data? And more importantly, how can I take advantage of correlation? And in fact, this last component is really interesting because the data actually reveals that there are very strong correlations across subject demographics, and we want to take advantage of that. And this is just an example where it shows how the risk of chlamydia in this case is highly correlated, sometimes positively or negatively. So in fact, in 75% of the cases over here, they had very high correlation. This is what it means with coefficient of correlation. And what we want to do over here is to take advantage of what is known as risk pooling. We can aggregate data, uncertain data, in a way such that the estimates are going to be more accurate. And how can we do that in an optimal way? So what we want to do is come up with a clustering scheme that condenses large data sets into small, more manageable sizes, retains the vast majority of the information, and takes advantage of risk pooling to improve estimates. Again, this is a powerful technique, and our results show that we can condense thousands of points into 3, in this case, 3 categories, while maintaining almost 96% of the information. That's quite a powerful tool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to conclude with non-research comments. What I want to say is that AUB has provided me with more than an education. It has seriously provided me with a lot of opportunities, and it's opened up many, many doors across the world. And every time I meet people and tell them that I earned my degree from AUB, they always tell me they know somebody and this university is great. So the reputation of AUB is very, very high, and I'm very glad to hear that. And then finally, I was told to give advice. I only have one advice, and it's basically work hard, dream big, and I'm sure you're going to meet all of your objectives. Thank you for your time.
So we'd like to give Hrayer a token of our appreciation. This is a design of an award that was made by Zeina Koreitem, who's the award-winning graphic designer. Reza, are you in the room? Reza, thank you again for this. I'd like to warn all the awardees today that these are fresh off the press, and so they're still a little bit steamy. So we're going to give you, and that's just a white shirt to take a moment. But congratulations to everybody.
The next awardee is from the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering, distinguished alumnus, Mr. Mahmoud El Assir. Mahmoud received his bachelor degree in Computer and Communications Engineering from AUB in 1997. He worked at the AUB Multimedia Lab as a research assistant with focus on network security and administration. So everything that we suffer from in terms of IT, we can thank Mahmoud for, or the solutions that he devised. After holding multiple technology leadership's role in Verizon after leaving AUB, Mr. El Assir rose to the post of Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer for Verizon Customer and Mass Business Group in the areas of digital sales and marketing systems, data analytics, voice portals, etc. Mahmoud is currently the Senior Vice President and Chief Technology Officer of Verizon IT. In this role, Mahmoud is responsible for the IT global infrastructure, cloud data analytics, and enterprise architecture areas, focusing on large-scale infrastructure and systems modernizations, system strategy, architecture, business impacting data analytics, scaling emerging technologies, and talent development. All of these are Mahmoud's responsibility. Please join me, Mahmoud.
It's good morning, everybody. It's my great honor and privilege to be with you here today. I'm very humbled by this award, this distinguished award. 22 years ago, it all started here. I had no idea what I wanted to do after I graduated. As a matter of fact, I wanted to go to the MIT, do the MIT program, go to the MIT Media Lab. So I was working to be the student selected for that. 4 months before graduation, GTE, at that time, now it's Verizon, showed up and they interviewed half the class. And then I would say I was selected also by GTE to go have a different journey, have a basically job with Verizon. So that has been, I would say, a huge step in my career. I had a weekend. I remember I was also selected for the Media Lab program, and I had a weekend to decide, and I decided to go with GTE. When I first started the journey at GTE, I was a systems engineer. I was focused mainly on developing systems, CRM solutions to take orders for like frame relay. Then I took the opportunity to develop workflow engines, and then with the merger of Bell Atlantic and GTE, Verizon was formed, and our group was in charge of developing Verizon.com. So Verizon.com was stood from the ground up, and these were, I would say, startup. We were all in a startup mode. And the startup mode, we were in 9 months, we stood up Verizon.com. It was a huge success, and our team took over also all of IT for Verizon. So I've done multiple roles, all the way from sales and marketing systems. And in the past, I would say, 7 years, I was a CIO, I was a CTO. So it has been a great ride, lots of fun. Just to get you, like when I first started, I think you see the transitions. When I first started with Verizon, the Verizon copper voice was the main product, and HSI was the hottest thing on the market. HSI is DSL. Today, Verizon has 114 million wireless customers, 6 million fiber consumer customers. We make $130 billion in revenue. We spend $17 billion in capital. And today, 2 weeks ago, we've been leading multiple, I would say, technology transformation in the communication world. 2 weeks ago, we were the first in the world to deploy 5G. And 5G is going to change the industry. It's going to change modern society, and it's going to change the world as we know it today. We call it the fourth industrial revolution. The first one was the steam engine, right? The second one was mass science and mass production. The third one was the rise of the internet and digital technology. And now at 5G is going to be the fourth one. 5G has multiple currencies, has 8 currencies. I'd say there are 3 main use cases 5G we're focusing on. So these 3 use cases are enhanced mobile broadband. And the second one, meaning you can get massive throughput, 40x more throughput and speed. You get the second one is ultra reliable and low latency applications. This is where you can get response time in less than 10 milliseconds on the edge of the network. And the third one is massive IoT. This is where you can get 1,000x more connected devices within a square kilometer. While there are many topics I can talk to you about today, I thought what could be most useful to you if I talk about leadership. Because leadership, I would say, is a career. So leadership is a profession. Throughout my career, I had the privilege to, I would say, I was lucky to work with 4 different leaders who shaped the leader I am today. The first one I worked with was all about leaders eat first, all about the team, and all about teamwork. The second one was about speed, about winning, enabling the business to win, about the customer. It was about how do you run a marathon at sprint speed. So you can imagine how many people you can leave behind when you go that fast. The third one was more all about inclusion and making sure everybody is moving together and every job is performing at the highest optimal matter. And the fourth one was all about unlimited empowerment. So to do the right thing. So that he will only talk to me when something is wrong. So, but in the meanwhile, I had access to everything I need to enable the business to win. Throughout my career, I would say there's a framework. I would say everything I'm saying, you don't have to do the same thing, but I would say pick the ones you like and build your own framework. I always thought there are 3 items you need to be successful. One, you need to have the will and skill. So you need to work on your self-leadership. The second one, you need to have the right team. And these are people on your team. These are the right partners. These are people you work with, basically, internally and externally. And the third one is about the opportunity. The opportunity needs to exist. So any of these 3 doesn't exist, it's very hard to be successful. So when you think about leadership, I would say there are 2 areas I want to talk about. One is like self-leadership and team leadership. So in self-leadership, the higher up you move in the organization, the importance of your interpersonal skills become more important than your technical skills. So technical skills are important, but the higher up you move, you have to have more interpersonal skills. The second one, the higher up you move in the organization, the more people are watching everything you're doing. So you need to lead by example, and you need to demonstrate the highest level of integrity. Also, as a leader, you need to debate, and you need to have constructive dissent. But once a decision is made, you need to rally yourself and your team behind the decision and execute, even if you voted for something else. Also, one of the skills you need to develop as a leader is to be a good listener. They say the power of listening is not waiting for your time to speak. So that's you as a leader, and you continuously improve on this. It's a muscle you build. As a team leadership, you need to hire people who are smart, people who have energy, people who can energize, deliver results, and have high level of integrity. The team you build needs to be diverse. So it needs to have diversity of gender, religion, ethnicity. And that's important because the more diverse the team is, the higher the chances are for you and for the business to be successful, because there are lots of diversity of thoughts. And then when you hire your team, make sure they complement you and then empower them to do their job and also empower them to do your job. So the way I think about it, I want to spend half of my team doing my job, and the other half, I want to be looking and identifying other opportunities. I call it white space, and connecting different dots so I can make different impact. And this will help you in 2 ways. It'll help you, you're not stuck in your job. You can move on to a different job because you have someone ready to do your job. And you'll be ready because you'll make an impact, and you'll be easy to get promoted or go do a different job and learn other things. And at the same time, when you make decisions, make sure there are no personal agendas. You make decisions in the best interest of the team, best interest of the business, and you'll have challenges. You'll have conflicts. And the best way to resolve conflicts is to rise above them and think, how would your manager deal with it? What decision would your manager take? And then also, it's very important to stay positive through and through and make sure your team feels secure. Because you'll go through lots of ups and downs, and it's important to make sure the team feels they have the support so they can keep moving forward. I would say build as many bridges internally and externally with your peers, because that's very important. And the idea, you do all of this to focus on the customer. So keep your focus on the customer, keep your focus on enabling the business to win, and continuously challenge the status quo and continuously improve. What we say at Verizon, we say there is always a higher gear, no matter how good we are. And we also say our best was good today, for today, and tomorrow we'll do better. So during your career also, you'll have lots of, you could have some failures and setbacks. So take these failures as learning opportunities and move forward. We cannot change the past, we can only look forward. And it's very important to fail. People report what they failed, how they failed, and what they learned from it. And that's not a failure. It's consider it as a learning opportunity. And one of the most important things I want to leave you with today, I would say, as you do all of this, you have to develop a muscle for respecting everybody. You'll encounter people who will try to drag you down, drag you up, distract you, not be aligned with you, and it's very important to respect everybody, and that continuously is a challenge. I'm not saying by respecting them you have to do what they say, you have to respect them and do the right thing. So that's a very important muscle to build. And then for like career perspective, I would say in the next 10 years, there's going to be an explosion in connectivity with 5G. There's going to be an explosion in cloud technologies, so networking and cloud and software is going to be an explosion. So for those of you where you want to focus your energy and take, I hear there are lots of electives right now. And the third one I would say is AI ML is going to be the new software. So I would focus on these three, and I'm sure you'll have a great impact on society and on yourself and on the business, any business you start. With that, I'd like to thank everybody and thank AUB.
I'd like to present you with this trophy. Thank you very much for being with us, and we're very proud of you. I didn't read the last one, so I'll read this one to you. This is the Nour Kanafani Faculty of Engineering and Architecture, Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering Distinguished Alumnus Award on April 2019. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mahmoud. Some of us are thinking of a career change at this stage. The next awardee is a young distinguished alumna, Ms. Farah Fayyad. Get my notes here. So Farah is a graduate of the Department of Architecture and Design in Graphic Design. Farah graduated from AUB in 2012 with a BFA in Graphic Design. She has two particular interests: Arabic typography, lettering, and screen printing. After graduating from AUB, she co-founded an experimental screen printing studio called Silk Road Atelier, based in Beirut. And as part of the Silk Road Atelier, she ran workshops and printed publications and products in support of local activities and cultural campaigns, and supported practices of local artists. Farah then worked at Studio Safar, one of Beirut's leading design agencies, for 3 years, developing projects primarily for the creative cultural field in Lebanon. Her work involves a lot of experimentation and play with the Arabic script and bilingual design in particular. In July of last year, 2018, she co-founded and is currently managing Nice Prints, a screen printing studio shop and workshop space together with her printmaking mentor, Mr. Salim Samara. She's also currently the art director for Dar al-Nimr for Arts and Culture, a museum, cultural space in Beirut, and she's collaborating with Tumo Studios, an educational foundation in Armenia, on setting up and running a screen printing facility in their center in Yerevan. So please join me in welcoming Farah.
Hello, everyone. First and foremost, I would really love to thank AUB for this award. I'm extremely grateful to have been chosen as the Distinguished Young Alumni this year, although honestly, young feels like a bit of an overstatement at this point. Those 4 years in the department were extremely inspiring and engaging on so many levels. We had the most beautiful support from our teachers and our mentors, and without a doubt, we were very lucky to have received such an impeccable education from this faculty. So one of the great things about our department in particular was that it really gave us a space to explore our skills. And I was lucky enough to be sure that I had 2 very particular interests, which were mentioned in the introduction. So after graduating, I always tried to find ways to express these interests. As designers, we're kind of privileged to not really have to conform to a full-time job, so we're kind of more free to move around, work part-time and freelance and things like that. So this is what I did for several years. At some point, I was extremely convinced that I wanted to fully pursue type design. So for many of you, that's designing fonts, which may seem like something like, oh, they're just there on the computer, you know, like, but someone actually sits for hours and weeks and years and actually makes them. So I studied the Arabic calligraphy for a while, and just as I was thinking this was definitely my path, I applied to a master's degree in type design and actually got rejected. So, of course, I was upset, but luckily that same summer, there was an intensive type design workshop happening here at AUB. So I went through it and came out 100% certain that actually I do not want to be a type designer. So one big piece of advice for graduating students is before you fully commit to any kind of long program, to try to somehow take a workshop, do some research, try to really understand what you're getting into before you actually commit to it. So actually, I ended up being extremely grateful for having this rejection. And what I focused on instead was what I always thought was really my one true love in this field, which is a type of manual printing called silkscreen printing. So it's a very old craft. It's kind of dying. A lot of people always thought, like, why would you focus on this? Print is dead, and all of these things. But for me, it's very important to keep this alive. It's something that will always be a need in a certain way. So the catalyst for me to take a more professional approach to this craft was an invitation from Tumo Studios in Armenia. So they had asked me to come and set up a printmaking facility in the center over there. And at that point, I mean, of course, I had taken silkscreen in AUB and loved it, but I felt like I needed much more practice. So I paid a visit to a man called Salim Samara, who eventually became my mentor in this field. So he's been around for 30 years, and we've just developed like a really nice, very classic mentor-student relationship. We still work together. It's been a few years, and together we founded Nice Prints, not just Nice Prints, in June. So it's a workshop space. It's a shop. So we've done several collaborations with local artists and illustrators on a line of products like T-shirts, tote bags, posters, certain like random things like balloons, jars. So we're just trying to explore printmaking as, you know, because it's really one of the most versatile production methods. So for us, the most important thing is to kind of try to build a community around this craft. So this is what I'm working on right now, juggling a million things. I still work for Dar al-Nimr, but as a freelance basis, I run Nice. I work with Salim, and I find it very hard to say no when people approach me with interesting projects. So I'm also always juggling a couple of freelance projects here and there. I think the best advice I can give graduating students is to really nurture your relationships with your teachers. And teachers are everywhere. They're not just on this campus. The design community in Beirut is very small, but it's also extremely active. People are generous and very hardworking. So it's really important to cultivate these personal relationships because everyone ends up collaborating, and it just makes room for so much more productivity. Another thing is never to be fooled by what everyone else seems to be doing. So again, a lot of people have told me print is dying and there's no need to invest any time in it or do anything about it. But still to this day, every time I give a workshop, whether the person is 7 years old or a designer or just someone from a completely different field, the excitement they experience, because really it's like magic. And I think for me that will always definitely be worth it. And no matter how fast the digital world is evolving, I think these manual skills are really not to be taken lightly. The last thing is, so when I was in my early 20s and I'd meet someone who was 28, let's say, which is my age now, I would always think, wow, this person is really an adult and they definitely like know what they're doing. And now, from this perspective, it's really, really not, I mean, it's just that uncertainty doesn't really go away. And even though on paper everything may seem like it's really put together, usually the experience is completely different. But that's actually a really great thing, because I really think certainty can tend to bring about stagnation sometimes. And doubt, on the other hand, makes things happen. So you question yourself, and that always forces you to move forward. So yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.
Congratulations, Farah. Thank you very much.
I'd like to apologize to Farah for missing one of the nices in the nice company. It's my fault in a sense because I decided to run spell check on the bios and Word doesn't like repeating. Okay. It's technology for you. So the next awardee is Mr. Nadim Habr. Nadim is a young distinguished alumnus from the Department of Mechanical Engineering. Unfortunately, Nadim is not with us today. He will be part of the closing ceremonies tomorrow, so we'll be giving him his award then, and that will be an occasion to read his bio if you're interested. It's already available, but that is another reason for you to come tomorrow night and witness the presentation of the award to Nadim. So moving on. Dr. Mohammed Hajj. Mohammed is a colleague in civil engineering, and he is a graduate of our department. He is our distinguished alumnus for this year. Mohammed received his Bachelor of Engineering degree from AUB in 1983. And then he decided, like what seems like everybody at the time who graduated, to go to UT and do his master's and PhD, because in our department, we have, from that generation, 3 colleagues who've done that journey, Dr. Hamad, Mabsout, and Abdel Malak. And so he did that as well. He went to UT, he finished his PhD in 1990, and then joined Virginia Tech and rose through the ranks as a member of the faculty there, and was the Byron Maupin Professor of Engineering and Director of the NSF-funded Center for Energy Harvesting Materials and Systems. He also served as Associate Dean for the Graduate School at Virginia Tech between 2014 and 2018. He was involved in the implementation of the Transformative Graduate Education Initiative at Virginia Tech. In 2018, Dr. Hajj decided to move to Stevens Institute of Technology in New Jersey, where he is the George Mead Bond Professor, the chair of the Department of Civil, Environmental, and Ocean Engineering, and the director of the Davidson Laboratory. So maybe you gained a couple of titles by moving all the way east. Dr. Hajj is a renowned scholar in the fields of nonlinear dynamics, fluid mechanics, structural dynamics, and fluid-structure interaction, with application in aero and hydroelasticity, ships hydrodynamics, biomimetically inspired air and underwater vehicles, and energy harvesting. He has advised and directed the research programs of 26 PhD students to date, and his students hold prestigious academic and industry positions. He is the author of a large number of journal publications, more than 150, and he's a fellow of the Engineering Mechanics Institute and has served as an elected member of the Board of Governors of the Institute. Please help me welcome Dr. Hajj.
Thank you, Salah. As Salah said, I feel home here. I know many people on the faculty and so on, so it's great to be here. I would like to thank everybody for this acknowledgement and for the award. Let me start by saying that I feel more than humbled, actually, because I graduated 36 years ago, or 30, not 22. I spent 28 years at Virginia Tech. You earned your PhD in 2018, so it's, you know, people still talk about young here. We'll see how it goes. Thanks a lot. I'm sorry? Okay, I'll stop. I only prepared a small thing here to talk about. When I was asked to talk about this, I checked the program, and I was impressed with the idea of ideas, with all of this about startup, about entrepreneurship, and so on. So at Virginia Tech, I ended up teaching a class on preparing career professionals, and a part of it was on entrepreneurship, and that's what I want to talk about for a minute. I won't spend a long time. So in that course, I invited several people who are CEOs of companies, presidents of universities, and so on, to come talk to the students about their experiences. Well, since they were going to talk about entrepreneurship, I ended up reading about it myself because I'm not an entrepreneur. So, you know, while I was reading about it, I ended up also, you know, I always like to know what's going on in the Arab world. I don't listen to the news, but I like to know about education in the Arab world. So I was looking at that as well, and then connected some dots that I would like to talk about. And that is about social or societal and individual values that are associated with entrepreneurship or with successful entrepreneurship. You know, one of the things that I realized when I was looking at it is that at some point it requires creativity. So you have a problem, you're trying to find a solution for it. That is creativity. You move it into innovation, and then you move it into entrepreneurship. And as I was doing some of my own research, I realized that there is one ingredient for creativity, and that is freedom. Freedom is very important for creativity. You know, look, the countries where there is more freedom, there is more creativity. Actually, in Lebanon, we're very creative. You know, when there is traffic jam, we drive on the other side of the road. It doesn't, and we could do that because we're free. That's creative, that's good. Except that we create another problem, so we go back to the problem part of it instead of going into the innovation. The other thing I realized about successful societal value for entrepreneurship, I found many of them, but I'll speak about the second one and then I'll move to individual values, is the importance of including everyone. Arab countries where women serve on faculty, where women have a greater role in university life, have actually more patents than Arab countries that spend a lot of money on entrepreneurship. So including other people, there is data on this. Actually, I write about it. It's important to have this idea of inclusion also so that we can be successful. So even smaller countries have more patents than larger countries because of some of these things. So those are societal values that we all need to acknowledge if we're going to work on entrepreneurship and ideas and so on. There are many of them. Probably I'll talk about them in the afternoon. It comes to individual values. So I met all of these people, and then I tried to build some common things about them. And one thing about them is that they all took good care of their health. Okay? And that's when I realized I'm not an entrepreneur. So all of them actually go exercise in the morning. And you know, every one of them, I became friends with them because we talked a lot about these things. Another part of it that was very interesting about them was that they were all very honest people. You know, it's amazing, actually. And I think that's very important for entrepreneurship. When you want to go ask somebody to support you, You don't want to scam them. You don't want to cheat them. You don't want to bribe them, okay? Because they're going to trust you with their money. Many of them, actually, if they needed more money to start their companies, they got a second mortgage on their house. They did not go and scam people to start their business. Okay? So that's really another individual value that I think is very important for successful entrepreneurship. So I don't want to take more time. We'll talk in the afternoon some more about these things and what for the students, what you could get more out of your education. And with that, I thank you, everyone. Thank you, Salah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Where is our staff photographer? He's coming. I'd like to mention that the two of us share some.
Thank you, Mohammed. Dr. Wassim Jabi is our next distinguished alumnus. Wassim is also one of those alumni who's going to be awarded his prize or his distinguished award tomorrow evening because he could not make it to the session. So we're going to skip Wassim and move on to Nour. So Mr. Nour Kanafani is the distinguished alumnus from the Department of Architecture and Design. He holds a bachelor in graphic design that was awarded in 1997. He is currently the chairman and CEO of Communications Design in Beirut and the founder and lead design principal of Design Consortium International Limited in the UK. Mr. Kanafani started his design career in 1995 while still studying for his degree. Today, his offices cater for clients in 15 countries, in various industries, financial services, consulting, oil and gas, automotive, higher education, fashion, food and beverage, real estate, and telecom. I don't know if there's anything else that is missing, but I'm sure he's working on it. His work is exhibited in New York City, Berlin, Frankfurt, and many other cities that would take a little bit more time to cover. So we'll stop with these. That's enough, I guess. Nour is a two-time Red Dot Design Award winner and a two-time German Design Award winner, in addition to being a member of the Type Directors Club in New York and a holder of the club's Certificate of Typographic Excellence. He was also celebrated as the Member of the Month in July 2018. In 2018, Kanafani, or Nour, won his client, AUB, the Case Circle of Excellence Award for his work on our sesquicentennial celebrations or the AUB 150 celebrations. So please help me welcome Nour to the podium. So I guess your most important work was your work for AUB, Mshay.
Actually, yes. But then your clients, I have to say that. But hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here. First of all, I had a presentation for you to show, but I think I can just, talk freely about something I always wanted to share with you. I think, my career was very diverse. I started with as a graphic designer first, and I used to enter meetings as the graphic designer on the project. Until, I think in 2001, I entered a meeting with Nissan Motor Company because they were my clients. I entered that meeting as the agency working on the account. The attendance in that meeting, there was several executives from Nissan Japan. And what they did was they mapped the brand equity of Nissan on several aspects. They mapped it on consumer research, consumer perception, brand values, the design of the vehicles, the price point. And I realized that this was a meeting about business strategy. It was not about me present as the agency. And I realized that my job there in 2001 was to understand the business strategy before I do anything or any work as a graphic designer. And I think that was a turning point in my career because I understood that, for us to do our job, for us to do good design, good communication, we needed to understand the company's brand and business strategy. Many things have changed from that meeting in 2001, but the main thing that has changed is that my clients nowadays depend much more on the brand strategy. I still cannot say that, the business strategy is now the brand strategy, but I have clients today who base so much of their budgets and so much of their money on developing the brand. And that brand at one point becomes the business strategy. And I think this is a great point for our department and for the faculty and for the graphic design department to look at the industry today and realize that we are much more than graphic designers. We are business strategists at one point. I have a client who has an oil and gas business. It's one of the biggest oil and gas companies in the country. They have 160 outlets. Everybody knows the brand. And now the whole business strategy, the budgets are put on the rebranding. And rebranding is not a small word. They're spending millions of dollars. So now the business strategy has become the brand strategy. And now I see myself more involved in the company and more involved in each and day-to-day business. And I believe that if they had a graphic designer on the C-suite of that company, I think we would have made such a big impact on the brand. And I really am an advocate of having designers and creatives on the C-suite of big corporations. And I touch that with every client I feel. I think designers, it's good to have CEOs and CFOs, but I think we need a chief creative officer in each and every big corporation. I believe we bring so much to brand and business. We bring humanity. We bring, I think, within the social world today, we can add so much value. And I think the department and the design school we have graduated from is at such a critical point right now in the business world. And I believe we can add so much value. And I'm a big advocate of that. So this is what I wanted to say, and thank you so much for this honor. I want to thank a few people. I want to thank, first of all, my mentor, Leila Musfi, who will remain my mentor for the rest of my life, no matter where this takes me. And quickly, I want to thank Lina Ghaibi, who is the sunshine of the department. We love you dearly. My parents for the wisdom throughout the years. And I want to thank my lovely, wonderful wife and my 2-month-old daughter, Raya, who kept me awake all night today. And I want to thank my team, who are the best team in the world. I love you guys. You made it all happen. Thank you.
So exactly what the world needed, another chief something to be added to the corporate structure. So I hope AUB is not on board. Maybe they should be, I don't know. So the next awardee is Ms. Zeina Koreitem, and Zeina also could not make it to this session. She is the young distinguished alumna from the Department of Architecture and Design, and she will be here tomorrow evening as well. So we'll skip Zeina and move on to Samar. So Samar, okay. So Samar is a young distinguished alumna from the Young Department of Chemical Engineering. I guess Samar is probably the first, and Advanced Energy, I'm sorry, okay. And it's official, I'm sharing, so. Samar received her Bachelor of Engineering in Chemical Engineering from AUB in 2013, so that's probably the first class that graduated from that distinguished program. She then joined Petrofac International in Sharjah as a process engineer. She was involved in a number of challenging and high-profile projects for leading clients in oil and gas in the region, such as Saudi Aramco, British Petroleum, and Shell. After 5 years at Petrofac, Samar moved to DuPont Sustainable Solutions as an operations consultant working on lean and operational excellence for clients in the Gulf region. She's currently handling the operations work stream and working on installing the production loss accounting process for 3 refineries and 1 aromatics plant in Oman. She's a member of, in addition to all of these things, she's a member of Toastmasters International and a certified competent communicator and competent leader. She competes in public speaking championships across the Middle East, and we'll get a chance to see her in action in a minute. And she's won the first place at the District Toastmasters Annual Conference for improvised speeches in 2016 and 2017. Why did she miss 2018? So, Samar, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you a lot for having me. I didn't leave this campus a very long time ago. It's been 6 years, and they actually passed like really quickly. Just to give you a little bit of a brief about my career. So I started as a process engineer, and obviously my whole professional experience has been in the GCC. So this is a place where women would walk into any technical meeting in the room, and people are gonna turn and look at them, because despite Lebanon being sort of leading the region in terms of gender equality, I find that in other countries, this is still lagging behind. And we find women in scientific fields to be, and technical fields and engineering fields to be less of a number than men. So I remember that one day I wanted to attend a HAZOP study because I was part of a project with Saudi Aramco on designing a gas plant. And at the time, my boss told me that I could not attend. When I asked why, he told me, well, because there was not enough space in the room. So I made sure that I attended, I was heard, and I stood up. Because I believe that when you're young and you're starting your career, excuses like there is no enough space, or you cannot do it, or this challenge is too big for such a small person, are things that should never apply to anyone. We should always be driven. We should always try to overcome obstacles, whatever they are. And I believe that throughout my career so far, I try to always learn. I try to be as inquisitive as I can. I try to ask questions even to CEOs and COOs, no matter how hard and tough the questions are, because I'm here to learn. I'm here to learn with my eyes wide open. But at the same time, as we learn and as we progress through the ranks, it's important to empower those who are younger and those who are hungry for knowledge. I think that we should not see our colleagues as competition. We should see the people senior to us maybe as an example, and we should always focus on what others are good at, and if it is a skill that we want to master, we should never be shy to approach people to be taught. We should always ask for it. Things aren't really gonna come to us, and they're not gonna come easy. I've worked on assessments from, risk assessments from mines, in Peru, in Chile. I worked on fertilizer plants, assessments in Pakistan. I went on site in Saudi Arabia, and it took me 2 years to get personal protective equipment that actually fit me, because they're not really designed for women, and let alone women who are 5 feet tall. So things take time. They're not always easy. It's not always smooth, but just make sure to be very inquisitive and very curious. What I always enjoyed about working in engineering, or basically process engineering, is like there is a lot of fascination when we see a huge plant running, and knowing that at some point throughout the creation of this plant, we're actually a part of it. And I think that because the scope of work is really huge, and because when we're part of it, we actually realize the number of people it takes to make things happen, it's important always to actually, besides appreciating this fact, but making sure that we maintain our values and principles, and we look at higher moral objective behind our work. So it isn't just like designing plants, it's more about making them safe and reliable. It isn't just about consulting clients on how to eliminate waste in their processes, but it's more about teaching them the importance of reducing energy consumption, the importance of containing losses, and the importance of containing risks, because at the end of the day, they have to protect their assets and their people, who are their biggest asset. And I think that an advice I would like to give to the young people is always never be hesitant. enter any market, go into any country, deal with any client, shake any person's hand, make sure you ask questions, maintain eye contact, make sure your work is bulletproof, be dedicated, and work really hard. Because at the end of the day, self-realization, I guess, is the ultimate reason why humans exist. And I would like to end this with a small, an incident that happened. So last Christmas, my boss was actually very proud of having finally a woman on his team in DuPont in the Middle East. He came to me and he said, oh, I acknowledge what you've done so far, and he gave me a book. And that book was called Women Who Run with Wolves. So I actually had to give him a lecture and tell him that women running with wolves is an understatement, because women are also capable of leading the pack. So I think that we should not we should not believe in limitations, whether limitations are due to gender, nationality, ethnicity, or anything. I believe that there are no limitations. I appreciate the human knowledge, and I seek it wherever it is. And now I'm trying to learn as much as I can in the world of operations consulting. And hopefully my aim is to climb up the ranks and maybe make it to partner. And I would also like to, if any of the young alumni here are interested, any of the young students here are interested in approaching me afterwards, I would also like to talk to them about any potential job opportunities or anything they would be interested in. Thank you so much.
Okay. So last but not least, Mr. Nadim Taha is the young distinguished alumnus from the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering. Nadim obtained his degree in Computer and Communication Engineering in 2011. While a student at AUB still, Nadim was responsible for hardening and managing the security posture of FEA's IT infrastructure, whatever that means. I'm sure it was something definitely very, very important. Should change that now, all right. After spending a year at Intel as a research scientist in the throughput computing and security research labs, Nadim completed a master's degree in information security at Carnegie Mellon University in 2013. During his master's studies, he managed to spend a summer at Apple working on the Mac OS kernel. Upon completion of his master's, Nadim joined Google, where he served as tech lead on Titan, the industry's first vendor-agnostic production silicon root of trust. Nadim is currently a senior principal software engineer on the core security team at Splunk, where he is focused on advancing product security architecture. Nadim is another testament to genetics. I had one look at him, and I knew that his sister was a student of ours and his father was a friend of mine. Simply, he has the same look. So I was a believer in genetics. Now I'm a true believer in. So Nadim.
Thank you. Wow, it's good to be back. Unlike Samar, I suck at delivering speeches, so I apologize in advance. Well, I'm truly honored and really genuinely excited to engage with the students over the next couple of days. I'll also be at the Mixer tomorrow at 1, I believe. It's on the schedule. So by all means, please come by and feel free to talk to me. I'm happy to share my experiences. So I'm not big on inspirational pep talks. Instead, I wanted to try to share something that was a bit more actionable. So I tried to look back how I used to perceive the workplace at AUB and early in my career. And I'm going to try to highlight some of the misconceptions I had and some of the things I wish I knew back then. So there's a former Google executive, his name is Mo Gauda, who after losing his son took a sabbatical to reflect on the mechanics of life and happiness. And he ended up writing a book, Solve for Happy, and presented his findings at Google, which is how I learned of his research. And his fundamental premise is that happiness is a function of the delta between your perception of reality and your expectations. And one of the examples he used to illustrate the perception factor is the following. So imagine that your significant other comes home and informs you that he or she crashed your beloved Lamborghini. Your reaction is probably going to, you're going to get upset. Now, instead, imagine that the sheriff gives you a call and informs you that your car was involved in the crash before actually telling you that, your wife or husband was not injured. By the end of his sentence, you'll probably end up, feeling pretty grateful and happy. That formula is pretty broadly applicable. If you were playing a game, you really cared about winning, and the rules constantly change on you, I'm willing to bet that you do worse than if the rules were clearly communicated up front. And that insight of that realists fare better than idealists, especially in the workplace, is why some of the thoughts I'll be sharing with you may sound sobering. And the quicker you calibrate your expectations, the more productive you'll be. Now, keep in mind that my perspective has been shaped by working for large tech companies in the US, so my comments may not necessarily apply verbatim to different environments. So the first observation I wanted to highlight is that recognition is only loosely correlated with your technical output. In contrast, school is very quantitative. For the most part, if you know the material, you walk into the exam room and you get good grades. But that utopian fairness ends the day you graduate. In the workplace, heads down work is really only part of the battle. The other half of the battle is actively managing perception. And you might get lucky and have a good manager that takes care of this for you, but more often than not, it's on you. And I'm not suggesting you engage in corporate politics, but make sure that the broader organization fully understands the impact of your contributions. Be as quantitative as possible and work on your messaging. Spend that extra hour polishing your presentation rather than making your code look a bit prettier. And if it's an oral presentation, record yourself, practice, etc. The reason I'm mentioning this is because I've seen several brilliant engineers get marginalized precisely because they couldn't eloquently sort of communicate the work they've done. Like another example to illustrate this point is during compensation planning, where employee pay bumps are determined, usually happens once or twice a year in Silicon Valley. One of the criteria you're explicitly evaluated on is flight risk. If the planner perceives you're more likely to leave the company, then they'll actually pay you more, assuming they want to retain you, which is typically the common case. Which in turn means that the reserved engineer who didn't express the same level of dissatisfaction gets paid less, all else equals, because the discretionary budgets are typically fixed per planner. To this day, I still struggle with this a bit. Somehow, it still feels that it's unethical to leverage a pay raise by threatening to leave, except that corporations are set up with the explicit purpose of generating profits for their shareholders, and your employment really, really is a business transaction. Netflix is now famous for pioneering the "we're a team, not a family" culture and firing employees liberally once they outlive their usefulness. And as a matter of fact, the head of HR who pioneered this culture ended up getting fired herself. And not because they stopped believing in that culture, just because she outlived her usefulness. And by the way, that kind of culture is still an outlier today. For the most part, the work culture in Silicon Valley is in that extreme. But what I'm trying to say here is that in the rare cases where your interests and those of the company you work for diverge, it's okay to act in your best interest. And you're not violating any ethical boundaries precisely because it's symmetrical. That one might be a bit controversial, and money really does matter in that you typically hear speakers advocating for an indiscriminate pursuit of passions, but I've seen far too many people being forced into life decisions because of financial constraints to buy into the notion that money should never factor into your career choices. And sometimes a short-term compromise is worth it to buy a lifetime of freedom. The difficult piece is not losing sight of your true priorities in the process. The process will vary for each individual, but for me, just making sure I periodically sort of had checkpoints and introspected with my goals and objectives and priorities did it for me. Another misconception I had was that technical excellence was all that mattered. I spent all the time I had reading books, papers, RFCs, and basically absorbing as much technical information as I could. And that's where your AUB education will pay off large. I can't, actually, sorry, I skipped. This approach of absorbing as much technical information as you can, works well if you're flying solo, but most things that matter in life you can't build alone. And when you're working as part of a team, process matters, and I was paying too little attention to it. So no matter your seniority, technical intuition is a critical skill, and the only way to develop it is doing the work yourself and exploring its full depth. And that's where AUB education will pay off large. I can't tell you, and that's really true, I can't tell you the number of times I came up with ideas in the workplace that I can trace back to insights I explicitly recall gaining by pondering a subject in college. And you could explicitly recall those moments and when you had that idea and when you had that insight. And if you're spending the bulk of your study time going through previews and pattern matching exam answers, you're probably doing yourself a disservice. It's true that you'll likely never encounter the specific problems you're being tested on in your professional life, but the bulk of the value you're deriving is intangible, and it's developing that technical intuition. And college is one of the few opportunities you'll have to learn unconstrained. You're lucky enough to have some world-class professors, so take advantage of it. Once you enter the workplace, the incentive system drastically shifts away from learning towards doing. And Facebook has a motto that I think embodies that point fairly well. I think they say it's, ruthless prioritization. And if you read between the lines, this also implies keep your curiosity in check. And that doesn't mean you can't, learn, and you can deliberately make time for it, but it just won't come naturally. And so the reason I keep talking about technical intuition is because at some point in your career, it becomes your primary tool. And the inflection point typically happens much earlier than you might think, and we're talking here, low single-digit years into your career. And that kind of role is often referred to as a tech lead. At that point, the rules change a bit, and success is no longer defined by your mastery of the details. And instead, you're evaluating on your ability to introduce predictability into an otherwise chaotic engineering process driven by a loose collection of individuals. So my first day at Google, my manager essentially just walks me around the floor, introduces me to random people or various people on his team, describing briefly the various functional areas they're responsible for, and literally walks away after telling me, to go figure out what I was going to work on. Getting that broad of a scope when you start is a bit unusual, but relying on employees to self-organize actually isn't. It's pretty typical. And so I can think of three main traits you'll need at that level to succeed. The first one, being critical, proactive, and having good technical intuition. And being critical is really about being able to identify the right problems to solve. And when you're being solicited to solve a particular problem, it's really being able to push back at that request and really make sure you're solving the right problem for the person who's asking, because there's so much noise that oftentimes what you're being asked for is not what the person asking really wants. Being proactive is about turning your observations into actual staff project, and the good technical intuition really is all about execution. And if I were to formally define technical intuition, I'd probably define it as the ability to make sound technical decisions based on partial information and/or the ability to minimize the scope of the questions that you need to answer to get to that determination, to that decision. And in practice, it also involves foreseeing technical and process challenges and mitigating them before they arise, and being able to ballpark engineering effort, et cetera. And anytime you have left after all of that, you typically spend implementing with the rest of your team. And I have two observations that are particularly important when you're in that position that I want to take the time to dig into. The first one is that people are not binary. Eventually you'll need to get comfortable evaluating people, whether it's for interviews, delegation, coaching people. And to some extent, school trains you to bin people in a single dimension. You have grades, you have an average, and you have good and bad students on that single spectrum. The reality is a lot more nuanced, and some engineers are slower but more reliable. Some are good with open-ended design. Some do well under pressure. Some are exceptionally well-rounded engineers, but they lack self-motivation. And so, keep an open mind and try to capture the full spectrum of people's abilities when you make these judgments. And the second observation is that at a certain scale, you should expect to run into obstacles you can't foresee. So, plan pessimistically. Google has a no heroes policy where individual heroics are explicitly discouraged in favor of more sustainable remedies, precisely to minimize the risk that as the organization scales, the more severe dysfunctions start to emerge. And on a related note, really recognize that work-life balance is largely in your control. I often get this question, does company X or company Y have good work-life balance? And occasionally, entire companies do foster toxic work cultures, that systematically overwork employees, and the gaming industry is notorious for it. But by and large, having to work overtime is a byproduct of adequately managing expectations, of failing to adequately manage expectations. Sometimes it's by actively setting the wrong expectations, but often it's just by passively allowing the wrong expectations to foster. And it's much, much easier to make a case about staffing a project differently early on than it is to justify not working overtime when the delay is costing the company millions of dollars every day because everyone worked against your timeline. And my last point is a bit out of character with the rest of the speech, but I felt it was important enough to warn the transgression. I've witnessed this as every single company I've been at. And for the future software engineers out there, test automation is as much about velocity as it is about quality. Imagine that you're about to fail a class, and you have this one last assignment that's going to determine whether you pass or fail that class. How much time you think you'd save if instead of obsessing and second guessing yourself and rereading the entire assignment, you had an automated grader that would instantly grade your assignment and allow you to resubmit without any penalties? And that's really what test automation buys you. And for the professors in the audience, I looked at the curriculum last night, and it looks like there were some new classes that explicitly cover testing as a first-class citizen, 437 specifically. But I think you can go further and effectively incorporate this thought into every class with a complex programming assignment that has a complex programming assignment through adversarial crowdsourcing. And the idea is pretty simple. Students submit tests or must submit tests with their assignments, and the tests they submit are run against every other assignment, and students lose points for failing tests irrespective of their source. And from my experience at AUB, students usually respond pretty well to grade incentives. So to recap, I've been rambling a lot. Calibrate your expectations. Understand that recognition rarely tracks your output, and actively manage perception and evangelize your contributions. Technical intuition is the foundation of your career, and college is one of the best opportunities you'll have to develop it. Plan pessimistically and actively manage your work-life balance. And remember that people are not binary, and try to capture the full spectrum of people's abilities when judging them. And with that, thanks again, everyone.
Thank you, Nadim, for an inspiring talk. That concludes this module of ideas. I'd like to invite everyone for a coffee break before we start. Oh, and I'd also like to invite the distinguished alum. And right after that, there's a coffee break outside before we begin the next module. Thank you all very much.
No, thank you. Yes.
Oh yeah, hold on. Sorry, 1 second. How can we go sort it? Distinguished Hadi. Second general. لا Hadi. No. Hadi. Second general. لا أيوة. This one?
No. Just 1 second.
That's good.
This one?